We begin the day with Vladimir Putin's message to the world, an announcement that came out so casually, so apparently off the cuff, that he didn't even bother to look at the camera. Today, Russia's paramount leader confirmed that he plans to run for re-election to the office of president in 2024. He dropped the unsurprising news at a Kremlin ceremony honouring military personnel.
I've had different thoughts at different times about this. But I understand that today there is no other way. So I will run for president of the Russian Federation.
Well, the 71-year-old has ruled Russia in one way or another since the turn of the century, serving 4 terms as president and a brief interlude as prime minister. Having quashed most public dissent, he's not expected to face any major challenges in March's election. Vladimir Putin has already been in power in Russia longer than any ruler since Joseph Stalin. Another 6-year term could see him in power until 2030, when he might even stand again. Here's some reaction to today's announcements on the streets of Moscow.
I think there is no better candidate than Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. I just can't imagine anyone else. I would vote only for him.
I'm not sure, but if I were him, I'd take a rest, stay healthy. The man is 70 years old.
It's hard to say if I have any expectations. I'm not expecting anything. I try not to follow politics. I think it's harmful for women.
Our correspondent, Jennifer Palka, joins us from our bureau in Riga, from where we've been reporting on Russia since DW was banned from the country. Welcome, Jennifer. Let's start with the way this announcement was made, almost in passing.
Exactly. Well, it was not a surprise that Putin was going to run for a 5th term as president. It was widely believed that he was going to do that, so that was not the surprise. It was more the timing of it. As you said, it was in passing by, and some experts stated that he would probably announce his candidacy next week on December 14th during his annual press conference. But now we all know what everyone already expected to be announced.
Right. And will he be completely unopposed in March?
Well, on the paper, he won't be completely unopposed. A few weeks ago, Ekaterina Duntsova, a Russian journalist and former State Duma deputy, has announced that she wants to run for the post of Russia's president as well. She is everything Putin is not, young, female, and most importantly, against the war in Ukraine. So she is for peace, even though she's very, very careful in not calling the war, but the special military operation, as it is called in Russia, in order to not be prosecuted and get fined for discrediting the Russian army. But again, before she can officially become a candidate for the presidency, she has to collect 300,000 signatures. And here lies the problem, where there are 2 possibilities. Either the Kremlin will allow her to register and let her you get the 300,000 signatures, so they can use her to actually make Putin look like he won fair and square against an anti-war candidate. Or they will not let her register at all because it's still unknown how the war sentiment will change in Russia. And with things not going according to plan for Putin on the front, it is a risk that the Kremlin is most likely not ready to take.
Right. So do we expect then this special military operation in Ukraine, the war as the rest of the world knows it, do we expect that to be a campaign issue?
Yes, Phil. Of course, the war in Ukraine will be an issue because Putin still has to kind of convince the majority of Russia's population that the war in Ukraine is a good cause. He has to legitimize it still. And he kind of also, in a way, has to distract the attention from all the failings that are going on at the front. For example, recently, a high court in Moscow banned actually the LGBTQ movement in Russia as extremist. And Putin did that, or the Kremlin did that, in order to find an internal enemy, a scapegoat, so they can actually shift the the attention of someone to blame from the front and from the Russian military to the LGBTQ community. But experts are not sure that this move will be going according to plan, or at least as well as Putin hoped it would.
So what does campaigning look like in a Russia where you have jailed or neutered most of your opposition?
Well, the campaigning looks different to, let's say, Yekaterina Dunsova. Putin, in comparison to her, has not, he doesn't need to collect the 300,000 signatures because he is put into the race by his party, by the ruling party, United Russia. So this is one of the first things that is already different from the normal campaigning, if you want to call it that way. What we also expect is that Putin will make some trips to different Russian regions, that state media will also be full of Putin and Putin's work schedule, trying to portray him as this capable man that will lead Russia to a better future. Putin will try to position himself, again, in comparison to Yekaterina Dunsova, as a stable choice, as someone who has a lot of political competence, who has been in power for 2 decades. So that is what his campaign most likely will look like.
OK, so a final word then, just looking away into the future. Putin gets another 6-year term. I believe he's allowed to stand again after that. He's 71 years old now. He's going to die at some stage. Is anyone daring to contemplate a post-Putin future yet?
Well, openly, no. So openly, no one really tries to speak out loud what a Russia without Putin could look like, except, of course, for the opposition and opposition figures that are already jailed, and no one really notices them speaking out anymore. But they, of course, behind closed doors, the Russian elite has probably thought about how Russia without Putin would look like. Maybe they already have divided posts, who will be in power where. But the West will probably think that once Putin is gone, dead, or just removed from politics, that Russia will be a democratic country, will reestablish relationships with the West. But that is more or less a mistake, because we have to keep in mind that Russia is still a security service, effectively a security service with a state attached.
Right.
So, and security services like the KGB, they are known historically for deciding who is going to be in power, and it's very likely that they will continue to do so.
OK, thanks for taking us through that, Jennifer Palka, reporting from Riga.